Welcome back to the 7th Grade Mustache. On today's episode, we'll be speaking about Breakaway Civilizations. There has been evidence that the space program that we all know, one being the United States NASA space program and the Russian space program, are not two separate ones, but they are one and the same. And it is just a cover for a greater space program that was run and is run by elites and was much more successful and went further and faster than the slow drip space program that we're used to.
We're made to believe. We're made to believe, yeah.
That's right. And people get caught up in race, in politics, in nationalism, and so they're quick to believe the official story. The traditional narrative would have you believe that the Russians were the first on the moon with an unmanned space probe. And then 10 years later, Neil Armstrong would set foot on the moon and make human history. Well, let me start further in the past so you understand the hierarchy that created this. So in this story, we'll be talking about Reichs, as in the Third Reich. But a Reich, by definition, is an empire. But Reich has a different meaning depending on whether it is uppercase or lowercase. So uppercase Reich means empire. Lowercase Reich, the German word Reich, means riches or wealth. When you consider that the First Reich was known as the Holy Roman Empire, not the Roman Empire, the Holy Roman Empire. So the Roman Empire was established in 27 BC, but the Holy Roman Empire was neither holy or Roman nor an empire. It was
the Vatican.
That's right. It was founded by the Frankish king Charles I, also known as Charlemagne. And that's the guy the radio dude bases his name off of. So
yeah, Charlemagne the God. Yep.
So Charles I, Charlemagne, or Charles the Great, who was crowned the emperor in 800 AD by Pope Leo III, after conquering and annexing most of Europe, including Germany, Switzerland, Austria, the Low Countries, part of France, Italy, and Czechoslovakia. This monarch empire was modeled after the Roman Empire and ruled by Kaisers or Caesars, and existed until 1806 when Napoleon marched his troops into Berlin. It lasted from 800 AD until 1806 with the arrival of Napoleon. So
1,000 years.
But you got to understand what occurred before that. We're talking about the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. And to speed up the death of Christ on the cross, he was stabbed. He was stabbed in the rib so he would bleed out. That spear that they stabbed him with, that spear was taken into custody by Pontius Pilate, who was the mayor, who decided to go ahead with the crucifixion. So there is a very strange cultish backstory that Christ didn't die on the crucifixion, that Christ survived the crucifixion and had a family. And it is that family that created the bloodline that became the ruling families of Europe.
Isn't it called the movement, the Rosicrucians, or
the Merovingians?
The Merovingians is the bloodline, but the Rosicrucians are the ones that be pushing it forward.
If you were conscious before people awoke, you would know that is the name of a character in the Matrix, in the second Matrix movie, and in the third. But the ruling class of Europe came from the bloodline of Jesus. But there's also an idea that if Christ did not die, then the ruling families are from the people who killed Jesus and used that blood.
There's two stories
on use that blood that's on the spear in magic rituals because they were devil worshiper pagans, and so they. Go ahead.
I was going to say a lot of the ceremonies you see that whenever you see these royal families, like that big rock they sit on and all this, whenever you start finding out the truth behind them, is either some pagan shit or it's some shit where they killed an African or killed a brown person. There's always some weird connection Even in modern day, Skull and Bones. Some people say that skull is from Geronimo. You know, we talked about it in a different episode. So many of these
but hold on. That's maybe true, but the Skull and Bones was also on pirate ships.
Oh yeah, no. I know where it came, but I'm saying that ceremony that they used to justify it, they used the skull and bones of a warrior that they couldn't tame. You know, there's a thing that we don't recognize that the people that are in power still idolize us in our physical power or our spiritual power, and they try to harness that in their ceremonies.
Yeah, vampires. So, they vampires. They're culture vultures.
They're straight up culture vultures. They drain your spirituality. Then that's why so much of the stuff they're doing is based on this. Many of the houses of Europe, we all know, are based on black people or had black folks in them.
Dude,
or
Peter the Great, his grandfather was a African that was adopted by a rich Russian family. So Tolstoy, the great Russian writer, his great grandfather was a black man. So the term Black Russian isn't just like some derogatory term; it's an actual term, black people. But we're getting off topic though.
Look, even the original ruling house of Germany, the Kongs, are black. The Kongs are black. Hitler didn't like that. Proceed, my brother.
The Second Reich was created by Prince Otto von Bismarck, who was premier of Russia and defeated Napoleon III in 1871 and became the Iron Chancellor over about 300 independent states. Bismarck's Reich, toward the end, headed by Kaiser Wilhelm II, lasted until 1918 and ended with the defeat of the Central Powers of Germany and Austria-Hungary in World War I. So, now, with the rise of Hitler to power in 1933, he proclaimed Greater Germany as the Third Reich, Reich being the German word for empire. Interestingly, but the thing is, though, he would also accumulate wealth and monies. So Reich in the lowercase, that would be funneled into Reich in the uppercase. So at this time in Europe, in German especially, you have all of these occult beliefs, and you have these Norse beliefs and runes and Norse gods and this Aryan ideology that comes from Atlantis. And so these people who believe they're descendants of Atlantis, these people have this manifest destiny idea that they are the chosen ones. They are like the cream of the crop, right? The Aryans. And so it is their belief that they have the right to control the earth and dominate it all over everyone. And so this is also what gave rise to socialism. But socialism and the idea of what a Nazi is an anagram of two words. It's national socialism. And so when you see that word in German, Nazi is a term that comes from the acronym of National Socialism. But when you see that in German, it is Nationalsozialiste. And if you take the two letters and the middle of the second one, it becomes Nazi. So instead of a Socialist, it's a Nazi. And it's the National Socialist German Workers' Party. And so this Nazism, this philosophy, is termed, it was in several dictionaries, it's termed as holding extreme racist or authoritarian views or behaving brutally, or anyone belonging to any organization similar to the Nazis. But when you see what the idea of National Socialism is, it's really about fascism. And when the Italian dictator Benito Mussolini created the term, he created it from his fascist black shirts, who called fascisti. And this term is derived from an ancient Roman symbol of fasces, or a bundle of rods with a protruding axe blade. It was a symbol of central authority. Under fascism, the individual is subordinate to the state and usually headed by a single leader. But the first stage of fascism should be more appropriately called corporatism, because there's the merger of state and corporate power. Now, you see this so many places now. And the reason why we're even talking about this is because this is what's laying the groundwork for this group of elite people that are creating this civilization that will eventually leave the earth and found colonies in space.
Look, there are precedents for this. In the Germans, the Nazis were known for doing this. You watch all the stuff on the History Channel, everything from Nazis in South America, Hitler's in South America, to bases on the moon, to bases in Antarctica, Antarctica. There's always, in people, they glance over this history, and either you don't take it seriously, or you're like, hey, this is some bullshit. Pay attention, because why can't you fly over Antarctica? Why are there so many laws over this land that nobody technically owns? That's because there's shit down there that we're not supposed to see. Now, whether it's alien technology, or whether it's some breakaway shit, or whether it's some Egyptian shit you find, because you got to remember, all these old maps had Antarctica on it, and we couldn't see the coastline until 1970. Until we did not know what the coastline looked at like until the 70s or the 80s, and we found out all these maps have the right coastline that were written 300-400 years ago. That's some crazy shit. So there's something down there that's worth having that we don't know about, whether it's resources or just some shit that's going to like validate everything we know, or start erase everything we know. But there are these societies have tried to break off before and start their own shit, and so recognize the pattern, recognize that they've done this before, that this is by design.
So for these people to rule and conduct themselves with complete obedience, you have to have an ideology that creates the groundwork and the ethos and thinking that the society will run upon. It's the software. It creates a software that the machine will run on, that the machine that is society and the government that controls it. But one thing you should understand is that communism was made in America. The same financial powers that built the United States into a superpower also created communism. Yeah. So
that's why you hear these extremists always say at the heart of America is communism, and we like, oh no, it's not. Yeah, that's because the seeds started here. Like, okay, let's try this over here. Let's see if it works. And these were all experiments that Americans had dabbled in.
Right. So a predecessor to the Council on Foreign Relations was Cecil Rhodes' Round Table. All right. And the AIC, the American International Corporation, formed in 1915, helped fund the Russian Revolution. Leon Trotsky, one of the guys that was behind a follower of Karl Marx and behind the Russian Revolution, he left the United States. He left New Jersey on a ship March 27th, 1917, just days before America entered World War I. So it is also not long after that the Federal Reserve was founded on Jekyll Island by very rich and powerful people connected to Cecil Rhodes, his Round Table, and what would become the Council on Foreign Relations. So the world that you understand today was created by a small group of people that manipulated it to meet their desires. But it didn't stop there.
All these wars are on purpose. All these disagreements are on purpose. That's what Ross was trying to tell you, that Russia and America have always been working together. And don't fall for that shit.
That's right. Don't drink the Kool-Aid, because President George Bush, his grandfather, the father of George H.W. Bush, Prescott Bush, was getting money from supporters and funding the Nazi Party in World War II. The crazy part about this was he was tried for war crimes, right? And he was labeled a traitor. And when his son was running for presidency in 1988, there was a news story that ran, and it had a bunch of senators speaking on his behalf, saying the son should not be committed based on the crimes of the father. Yeah, ain't that a bitch? So if that you see how these motherfuckers, how these funky ass devils do this shit.
But see, what they do this shit in plain sight, and sometimes because I want to say it correctly. There's a saying that if you have people fighting over their basic needs, they'll ignore the keys to their own freedom. While we're arguing over food, healthcare, and this other shit, these motherfuckers parade their bullshit right in front of us, and we don't even have a say so with it. Because if that was anybody else, prime example, Arnold Schwarzenegger, his father was a Nazi or grandfather was a Nazi, was in the Nazi party. Now, the way he explains it, like, yeah, that was the only job around. That's what they were doing. I had nothing to do with that. And look, we made him governor of one of the biggest states. Trust me, white folks will parade that shit in front of you, and you don't recognize it, or you'll defend them. You know, that's that Stockholm syndrome we got, that battered woman syndrome. Oh no, Arnold, he's a good guy. That was just his dad. Look, you better hope that he don't have any of them traits from his father, because that shit will eventually catch up to us.
So there are certain other things. There's certain things that you have to understand. Now, jumping ahead to the Nazi Party in World War II, as the Nazi Party was recognizing defeat, weeks before, they formed these rat lines to get these officers and scientists out of Europe into South America. And so these rat lines are distribution networks that got these guys into Argentina. Now, there are a lot of things that were going on, because things that are relevant to this conversation. For example, in 1939, in the beginning stages of the war, there were prototype craft that were being tested by the Germans. And the prototype craft was called the Haunebu. And the Haunebu was a anti-gravity spacecraft that could fly at speeds of Mach 3 in the Earth's atmosphere. There was nothing like that the Americans had. The jets hadn't even been invented yet. The Air Force hadn't been invented yet. It was just the Army and the Navy, and maybe some Marines. But there was no Air Force. There were no jets. These German scientists created this craft called the Haunebu, and this thing could fly. It could levitate. It used jets for taking off. And it used jets for flying through the atmosphere, but it used anti-gravity to move about, taking off and flying around. So, but when you see archive photographs of this ship, it looks like the Milano from Guardians of the Galaxy. Yeah. This is crazy, dude. Like, when you see these photographs of this ship, it looks like a smaller version of the Milano. But they said it could fit 9 crew members inside this ship. Now, the Haunebu was the first of several ships that were made, because they made improvements as they went on. But you got to wonder, where did the Germans get this technology? How did they find this shit? Like, how did they figure out how to make this anti-gravity ship? Well, it's because spacecraft existed for thousands of years. And because you got to understand, the Nazi Party is rooted in occultism and the fact that they believe that they're descendants of Atlantis. And so through their Aryan network, they got a hold of the Hindu Vimanas, which are the ancient Hindu Indian flying ships from the Bhagavad Gita, how they talk about in the ancient Hindu scriptures how they were flying ships and there were nuclear weapons.
Yeah, they talk about that spear. They talk about nuclear weapons.
Technology from Atlantis and Lemuria and Mu, ancient astronauts. So, but of course, you, being an American citizen, being a citizen of the world, you have been indoctrinated to think that all technology that you have today is the zenith, it's the highest point of it. Well, if you believe that the iPhone is the greatest invention that there was, you're a fucking dummy.
But that's by design. The way you suppress somebody from ever being great is to think that they've already achieved the most they can achieve. And when you throw that out there, it stops you from achieving more, doesn't it? It stops you from asking for more, desiring more, or even thinking more. They're limiting your thought process. That's how they get you. And all these other societies were designed to be breakaway societies because they're elitism. What did they say on Falcon Winter Soldier? They're supremacists. So if you're a supremacist, you feel like you can do anything. But if you're, and again, white supremacy, blah blah blah, whatever. But when you actually think that, then your thought process is different. You're looking to achieve way more than just the average person because you think you can. Well, the average person is thinking that, hey man, I'm already there. Why would I want any more? Let me just, let me have this little slice of society and I'm cool. But no, a supremacist, they think they can go to the stars. They think they can do this. They know that it's been done before. They recognize the writing on the wall. So yeah, these breakaway societies, they were really trying to start their own shit and use us just as fucking cattle. It's just a way to accumulate their wealth and their desires.
So the Nazi Party had UFO technology, and it was called the Haunebu. But there's strange oop arts or out of place artifacts. And there is a toy model that was released by a famous company that Americans will be familiar with called Revell. Revell makes toy models. And all of the toys that you grew up with, they always make models of them and sell them. Well, this is a German company. And they released this toy model called the Haunebu 2, a German flying saucer painted in the German camouflage with the Maltese cross on it. So this is the crazy part. This model was released, and then they were pressured to remove it, to take it off the shelves, because the crazy part is that like the German Children's Protection Association and the Military History Museum complained that this product provided an inaccurate account of history. You're fucking up the narrative. You're putting shit out there that we don't want out there, basically. So they use these groups to talk about it because you're calling attention to the secret space program. And so this model it's a trip, man. Like it's okay. These are the specs that they quoted for this toy model. It said it is called the first object in the world capable of flying in space. And it's listed at the top speed of 3,750 miles per hour. And it stated that the Nazis ceased production after the test phase because of the end of World War II. Okay, yeah, we believe that. They stopped that. But even though you can see photographs of these life-size battle-scarred hulls. And so the crazy part is the model includes Nazi emblems and is described as a vehicle from the Third Reich, even though no such machine has ever existed. Okay, buddy. So the crazy part is
why was it necessary for you to pull it if it's just a toy? It's no different from you making a unicorn. Nobody cares about that. But if that thing will actually change everybody's thought process or have them start looking through history and questioning shit, That's a problem.
So this is the damage control right here. It says further, the representative from the museum stated that presenting this model without mentioning that it never existed in real life risk giving people the false belief that the Third Reich technology was far more advanced than it actually was. In doing so, it gives pro-Nazi supporters an opportunity to cause people to doubt what is factually known as the Nazi Party and their capabilities. Well, the only problem is real, actual Haunebu craft were put on a train and taken to America. They're taken to they're taken to a boat, and from the boat they will cross the Atlantic and brought to America. So this is the problem, though. There's all types of fuckery afoot in World War II because what's his name? Patton, General Patton, and his men were told to pull back and wait 100 miles from Berlin. They were told to pull back and wait while quote unquote negotiations were going on between the Nazis and the American government. So what was happening was the beginning of Operation Paperclip. And Operation Paperclip were 1,600 Nazi scientists and Nazi officers were being ferreted out of Germany and brought to America. And that was the beginning of Operation Paperclip. So, but you also have to understand the network of rat lines that was bringing about the express or the routes to get these Nazis out of Europe. And so one that went into South America, that went into Argentina, was created by Juan Domingo Perón. He was the dictator in South America. He spoke German, and he was a great admirer of Adolf Hitler. His wife, a former prostitute, Eva Perón, they made a movie about her, and Madonna was in it, glorifying this chick that was a Nazi sympathizer. And she was a liaison between Nazi refugees and the Argentine government. So any Nazis seeking asylum would come through her. So the crazy part is when you look into this further, you find that Argentina's first Air Force, first police force, their first army was trained by Nazi generals and officers. Their Air Force was trained by Nazi pilots. Their police force was created from the SS. You see? So this is this whole nationalist socialism Nazi ideology taking hold and becoming the Fourth Reich on another continent. And so the next Reich.
Again, you see this stuff on the History Channel. You see these things in little blurbs, and the way they give it to you is like, this is just some bullshit. So you won't question it. So you just like glance it in passing. Or, oh, they had a special about this, the Nazis. Well, but these whole societies were set up by these people. They spread their wealth around, but they also spread their influence just because they wanted to rule. They care more about ruling than anything else.
So the problem is that these Nazis weren't leaving Europe empty-handed. They were leaving with Jew gold, Jewish wealth that was stolen by Nazis. And so they used this to fund their Fourth Reich. And so this funded so many different things around the world that became this octopus, the tentacles of this Nazi octopus. And the Odessa files were the rat line. And that was the rat line of all these Nazi officers and scientists. NASA was comprised of many different Nazi scientists. So when the space race took off, it created such a large vacuum, a brain drain, that they were needing Nazi scientists to help fund this fake competition with the Russians to get into space. So even as recent as 1957, there were Air Force generals going to West Germany to have meetings to recruit more Nazi scientists. This was public knowledge in 1957. But going back a bit, you will see that Operation Paperclip recruited these people and put them into different industries. Yale University hired former Nazis for their think tank. All of the corporations hired former Nazis as scientists for pharmaceuticals, for the food industry, all these different parts of society. They just absorbed Nazis into it. This is the crazy part. It was discovered that Wernher von Braun at NASA in the United States was sharing information thousands of miles away with Nazis that were in the Russian space program, who was supposed to be the enemy during the Cold War.
Here's what we're telling you. If you're looking at what we're saying, that the Nazis were way ahead of what we thought, and when Germany got broken up, we took all these different scientists. We're actually using obsolete technology. They gave us the bullshit technology. The idea of rockets and all this shit, that was obsolete. They were doing rockets in China 700-800 years ago. Rockets are obsolete. They gave us the bullshit technology, and that's what they fed us. And if you don't believe that, let's look at all the times when you start studying automotives. How many of these cars had those carburetors that would run on water for all these miles, and that technology has all been patented by GM, and they won't let that shit out. We have it's called manufactured obsolescence. And they do this shit on purpose. They don't give you the technology, the best technology out there. They give you the shit that's going to make them the most money. And if you don't think this is on purpose, then you're an idiot, because we find all kinds of records of these cars that get like 100 miles to the gallon, but they won't release it, or GM would corrupt it and bought the patent, or even going back to...
Listen, growing up as a kid back in the day, you had this concept that the future was this bright place, this bright place where like your imagination,
flying cars,
and your imagination could create a wonderful world based on science and flying cars and teleportation and space travel. And yes, it could have happened in an alternate reality. It did happen, but it didn't happen in this one because there was a purposeful retardation that was placed on the scientific growth of American ingenuity. And the reason is because in the Nazi ideology, there is no scientific freedom. All of the control and suppression on information extends into the scientific sector. But I want to come back to the Haunebu spacecraft, because I want you to understand a little bit more about it, because this craft, it had an advanced electromagnetic gravitic engine utilizing a Van de Graaff generator and a Marconi vortex dynamo to affect gravity and reduce mass. And a new type of weapon, the KSK gun, was supposed to be utilized in the new vehicle, but they claimed that it destabilized the craft in flight. So they had to figure out how to get this laser gun to work with the UFO.
Basically, they're saying when they shoot, the gun made the damn thing move, and they couldn't control it.
Yeah, exactly. So the Haunebu took its name from the Hauneburg region in which it began development before being moved to the Vril Arado Brandenburg Aircraft Testing Facility. I'll say that again.
Hey, if you want to look it up, spell Haunebu for him. Haunebu.
Yeah, Haunebu. And check this out. I'm going to say this again. It was moved from Hauneburg region to the Vril Aircraft Testing Facility. The word Vril is so very important because the Vril Society is the occult group that had this ancient Atlantean, ancient astronaut, Norse god occult belief. The real society is what is the rich white people occultists that funded Hitler. Okay? So that when you tell them that you have a spaceship, some dickhead has a fucking car alarm going off. Anyway, hold on. Yeah, so when you tell people, when you go back to Cobra Commander and Cobra La and you tell them that you have a spaceship, yes, we have a spaceship that can take us out into space and away from here to go and talk to the fucking tall whites and the mantis aliens and the fucking grays and all these people. So what's crazy about it though is that there's so much occult activity going on behind the scenes that nobody wants to fucking talk about. They want everything to be white and black.
Check this out. What nobody gets is that America has this thing called separation between church and state. Well, if you pay attention to these other places, the separation is much more blurry. You have science and you have religion and you have history, but it all melds together. And when you have that, when you put it all together, you have a better chance of achieving some shit. But when you separate everything, hey, religion's over here. Religion doesn't want science. And when you separate the shit, you don't get nothing accomplished. But when you put it all together, you look for the truth. Your ass is you see a whole different thing. These Nazis, they combined all that shit. Their science and their religion and their history and their archaeology, they had it all. Okay. And they all put it together.
So, but here's the thing though. These people, they weren't like you're taught that these Nazis were just science and warfare. No, they were occultists as well, which means that they had the spear of destiny, which used to cast all types of crazy spells, okay, which was used for all types of weird, quantum mechanical, strange, physical type of things. But the deal is that these people might have had King Solomon's treasure. Now, people think King Solomon's treasure was just a bunch of rubies and diamonds and gold and emerald. No. King Solomon's treasure was a bunch of scrolls. He had mines in Africa, but he also had scrolls. And he had stuff that would have been part of the library of Alexandria. But Solomon's treasure.
King Solomon the smartest man that ever lived in many cases. So what made him so smart? What did he have that all these
sacred
other
sciences
didn't have?
He had books and books on sacred sciences. He had books on how to open portals, which people who practice magic would call that conjuring. This guy could open portals into different worlds. And he had these in scrolls and in books. And he had all types of crazy incantations and strange devices. Listen, Solomon existed in a time where he could have artifacts that were from Atlantis, that he could have artifacts from ancient civilizations. This guy may have even had contact with extraterrestrials. He probably had contact with the Indian civilization and their Vimana flying machines. So what if King Solomon had a flying machine that he had buried? And at some point, the Nazis or people very powerful dug these things up and they then reverse engineered them. Because when Bob Lazar was interviewed on the JRE, he said that the spaceship that he was working on was old. He said it was very, very, very old, and it wasn't something that was just found in the past 100 years, which leads me to believe that it is possible that this is one of the Vimanas that was probably found in the Middle East or near India.
Look, I know this sounds crazy, but they always mix fact with fiction and fiction with fact. But Raiders of the Lost Ark, if you need proof of that, pay attention to all these archaeology finds that these Germans have. Germans know shit that nobody else does. Now, how would that be the case? Because they were doing these archaeological digs, and they were looking for shit. They were legitimately looking for shit. And what they find a lot of black artifacts, A lot of these black artifacts are in Germany and in England and Europe and all that stuff. But the bottom line is this: they were looking for something, and what if they found it and they just didn't tell us? You know what I'm saying? What if that's why Germany stopped digging, because they found what they were looking for? It just look. It stands to reckon that these people went looking for something, found it, and then they backed away and tried to use it, because they focused on that. A lot of the stuff you're reading about UFOs goes back to Germany, or anti-gravity. Nikola Tesla, he was ahead of his time. Guys like that, they some kind of way they had the ability to get thoughts back and forth through time. How? And we still keep finding Egyptian artifacts everywhere, when supposedly they weren't supposed to be able to get there. Did they go by boat, or did they go by something else?
Okay, so you got to understand that the Nazis had advanced futuristic technology. They had the Jewish gold, and they had the sacred scrolls and possibly ancient technology from King Solomon's treasure. Then you had the Nazi fascist socialist Aryan ideology, and these were the building blocks for a breakaway civilization, because you have a lockstep, highly obedient population that will do whatever you want. They won't step out of line. They don't question authority. So you have no resistance. You have all the capabilities, the power, the know-how to create a separate space program at a different location that nobody goes to on the Earth. What am I talking about? Antarctica. Because look at what's going on. Just trace the line. They're going straight down. They went out of Germany into Spain. And into Spain, they flew from Spain, or they took a boat to Spain's colony, which had the most white people in it in South America, Argentina. And so they're going to this friendly place where there's no resistance, and the president, or the dictator of the country, is down with your leader, speaks your language. His whole ass wife is down with the cause. And everybody is like, hey, come on down here. It's good. We're going to build, the extension of the Nazi party. We want to create the Fourth Reich. They just don't say this out loud. But
look,
if you
look
put
it up on a map,
yeah,
look it on the map. New Swabia.
New Schwaberland. It's called New Schwaberland.
It's okay. It says New Swabia on here. So if I'm saying it wrong, I apologize. But New Swabia, the expedition was in 1938 through 1939, and that's the area in Antarctica that they claiming. They got a Nazi flag and everything.
Okay,
expedition logo.
But you hear that though?
They got a patch.
1938-39, the same time that the Haunebu was being created and tested. So all they're doing is they're laying the groundwork. We have our ships, we have our location that we're going to move everything down here to this. This will be our jump off point from leaving the Earth.
Or here's the other thing. We keep talking about South America. How far is South America from New Swabia? You got Argentina and what are the two skinny ass, Argentina and Venezuela? They are not that far from New Swabia. So just think about it. Maybe that's why they're in South America, because they had resources. They can go back and forth to Antarctica and nobody say shit.
Right. And you brought up a really good point, because there's close proximity from the tip of South America to Antarctica. It's not that far. When you look at it on a map, it's probably the distance from Canada to the North Pole. From northern Canada,
it's shorter than that.
From the Yukon to the North Pole. No, it's probably about the same distance, because, you're not including the Arctic Sea down there. You're not factoring that in. But here's the thing, though. Okay, this is where shit gets crazy, because they go down there and they establish New Schwaberland, all right? And then once New Schwaberland is developed, the Americans find out about this. And so they don't want them
They want some,
and they don't want that shit to get too far out of pocket. And they don't want the Nazis taking hold and striking back. The Empire Strikes Back. So, Operation High Jump, December 2nd, 1946. The Operation High Jump convoy that was led by Admiral Byrd. Admiral Byrd departed Norfolk, Virginia, December 2nd, 1946, en route to Antarctica. Under his command, he had 4,000 troops from the U.S., Great Britain, and Australia. Now, Admiral Byrd had some serious-ass adventures at New Schwabenland because they encountered the Nazis by sea and by air. So this is what's really puzzling because there were warships, American warships, that were destroyed. They were destroyed by direct energy weapons, direct energy weapons. These direct energy weapons, lasers, were taking out warships and airplanes, but they also got into dogfights with flying saucers. These flying saucers, these Haunebu, you know what's crazy about all this is that, you don't hear anything about flying saucers anymore.
Nope.
During the 50s, it was all about flying saucers. 60s, 70s, it was all about flying saucers. Well, guess who was in those flying saucers? Nazis. Because one of the first and most important alien abduction stories, hang on a second. One of the first alien abduction stories was about a couple, a black man and his white wife, and Betty and Barney Hill were their names. And they had an abduction story. James Earl Jones plays the husband in the movie about them. And in their story, they talk about how they went on a ship. They saw
scientists.
But the crazy part about it is they saw soldiers and pilots that were wearing clothes that looked like a modified version of Nazi military clothing. And they said these were human. They said these were regular looking human beings. Go ahead.
According to Wikipedia, they said from the tip of Antarctica to South America is 500 miles. From Antarctica to Argentina is 3,400 miles. So 3,437 miles. That shit is not far away. It's
a distance. You're talking about the distance across the United States. That's the distance.
You know where I was going with it.
Across the United States. Right. That's how long it takes. So it doesn't take long. It takes like 7 hours. Back then with those slower airplanes, it took them 7 hours to fly down to New Schwabenland. And when they got down there, when Admiral Byrd and them got down there, they didn't encounter Nazi U-boats. They didn't encounter they didn't encounter the Red Baron or none of that bullshit. They encountered UFOs and they were outgunned. And so there is the transcript of what happened of the communications.
I'm looking it up right now.
Yeah,
I'm looking it up right now.
And it said,
Operation High Jump.
It said, stop firing. We don't want to destroy you. And it was then that they had a negotiation. They had negotiation. So then Admiral Byrd returned. Now this is the crazy part. This is where it gets cuckoo crazy. Supposedly, Admiral Byrd was flying around down there, and he flew into areas where there were large holes in the ground, and yes, and he flew into some of these holes. And he said when he flew into these holes, the temperature went from Arctic frigid to warm, temperate climates where he saw lush vegetation and animal life inside there. Now that is fascinating. So you hear about this hollow earth, you hear about Shangri-La. It sounds like a fairy tale. But, you would think that the top of Mount Everest is a fairy tale until you reach the top of Mount Everest. Excuse me. But there are people who have reached the top of Mount Everest. It's not a fairy tale, but it is the tallest structure on the planet Earth. And so the hollow earth, New Schwabenland, a breakaway civilization, All these things are indeed happening because when you look at the space program and you look into the details of the space program, there are transcripts from the Apollo moon mission. And when Apollo, the Neil Armstrong, had landed on the moon and he was walking around, he said, "We're not alone up here." And what he was referring to were lights on the horizon, as if they were being watched by people in crafts or beings in crafts. Perhaps these were extraterrestrials. Perhaps they were the Nazis in their Haunebu or in their advance. Because you got to understand, by that time, it had been 20 years, 22 years since the war had ended. So the Nazis had all this time to develop all of this technology, reaching further into space, creating colonies on the moon and colonies on Mars and on the moons of Jupiter. So this is the thing, though. We can't see the dark side of the moon. We always see one side of the moon. And so
isn't there something going on with China in the moon right now where they were discussing like China has some kind of shit up there, but they were talking about it and I glanced over because there's so much crap out there right now. But
we'll get to that in a second though. But I was looking at a map of all the landing sites from Russia and the United States on the moon. And then they showed the landing sites of Russia and the United States on the dark side of the moon. And it's all in one place, all in one crater, and it's not highly publicized. And I find that quite peculiar.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
Right, because you're told that, well, on this part of the moon, it's always cold and, it's not possible for people. Well, we can go to Antarctica. We go to Antarctica and they're surviving just fine there.
We can deal with the cold, dude. We can deal with cold. That's not good enough.
Cold is not an issue.
Something more to go on.
There has to be more danger involved. It has to be incredibly dangerous and impractical for NASA to not go to the dark side of the moon. Well, NASA doesn't have to go to the dark side of the moon because the secret space program is going to the dark side of the moon. And that secret space program was started by the Nazis. And it's still run by the Nazis, but there have been outer space treaties that were created and are recognized by the United Nations
already
in the 1960s. But what I find particularly troubling is in 2015, the United States government drafted the Outer Space Mining Treaty on November 15, 2015. And it's called
the fear is that somebody's going to start mining these asteroids.
Oh, no. Hold on. No. That's not it. You're missing. No, stay with me here. Stay with me. We're losing them. Stay with me. All right. House Resolution 2262. That was ratified November 15, 2015. The U.S. Space Competitiveness Act. It states that all mining operations are protected from regulatory measures until 2022. What? Hold on. Wait. Why are you trying to legislate something that doesn't exist yet? I don't understand.
I told you. They actually fear that.
See? No.
Prospecting.
No. Brother.
It's already being done?
It's already being done. There is space slavery going on right now. All these disappeared people, all these abducted people, all these scientists that go missing in national parks, all the people that go missing in national parks, all these different people that go missing. There are mining colonies. There are mining colonies in space, on the moon, on Mars, on the different moons of the other planets. They are mining these things, and the United States government had to create a treaty, a law that protects them from being sued, from being arrested and put in jail for crimes against humanity in space.
Look. So you mean to tell me this is not about an anal probe? This is about something else?
Yeah, dude.
Tell me that. Look, they've been talking about that shit for a while. That these asteroids have so much natural resources. Because people must understand, gold is not produced here on Earth. All gold comes from space. When you try to explain it to people, they look at you like you're crazy. Diamonds are made by pressure. Gold, no. Gold comes from asteroids. Gold comes from space, and it accumulates here in a weird ass way. But so I know for years they've been talking about it takes one asteroid and we can get a hold of it, and so much gold on there we can do this, this, and this. This proves that they're already up there doing the shit. You're right. My bad, bro.
So
carry on.
Okay, in 1977, there was a documentary that was, they called it an updated version of the War of the Worlds, and it was called Alternative 3, and it aired on British television one time and one time only. When you watch this faux documentary, it does look staged. You know, parts of it look staged, but they're showing their hand. They want to communicate something to you. In this documentary, it talks about how scientists have gone missing, the brain drain, how a bunch of scientists have gone missing from the United States and the UK. It talks about how climate change is involved with it. And it talks about how there was a space program that was developed parallel to the Russian and American space programs, and how these people would drive their cars to an airport, leave them there, and these people would disappear. The cars would be at the airport for years, for unclaimed for years. Nobody would claim these cars, and these people just get on these airplanes and disappear. So when you dovetail this with stories about Air Force pilots who are flying the C-130 cargo jets to Antarctica, and there's stories from several particular pilots who talk about how in the early 80s they would fly missions from the main base, McMurdo, to the small satellite research facilities. And they would put these skis onto the wheels so that it could land on like this soft snow and take off. And there was one particular story where a pilot talks about how they flew over a research facility, and they said there was nobody outside, there was nobody around, there was no smoke coming out of the homes, there was nobody there. They landed and nobody was there. They went back to base, and they told them, we're going to refuel. We have to go back and pick these people up. So they got back in the plane. They flew back to the research facility, and as soon as they land, they open the door, the back door, and all these people just ran inside and sat down. They said these people would not make eye contact with them. They said these people wouldn't talk. He said it was as if they had the fear of death put in them. They saw something that just turned them ash white. They were already white people. So he said they got on the plane, they closed the plane up, and they started flying back. They said these people would not talk. So the crazy part is that they then had a meeting with these government types in suits. And they showed up and they said, whatever you saw, whatever you thought you saw today, you didn't see. And they said they didn't have to sign any type of non-disclosure agreement. They said, if you want to keep your rank, if you want to keep your benefits when you retire, you didn't see anything. So then this same group of pilots are flying over another research area, and they wanted to take a shorter route to get to this research station. Mm-hmm. And they're flying by, and they see this. They're told to don't look out the windows, just follow the radar. Guy looks out the window, and he sees this huge hole in the ground. He said this hole did not make any sense because there was ice all around it. And he's trying to figure out, how is this? He said it was so big. He said it was about the size of 7 football fields. And he was trying to figure out how this hole got into the ice. When he got back to base, of course, he had another meeting, and they told him, what you see is not what you saw. You didn't see anything. And if you want to keep your retirement benefits, and if you want to keep your rank, keep your mouth shut. This is all strange. All these things tie into Nushwabaland. It ties into the Hollow Earth. It ties into what Admiral Byrd saw. it ties into the Nazis creating this breakaway civilization based on this technology that's partially old, ancient astronaut information, and some of it that they created themselves with anti-gravity. So these breakaway civilizations that created a parallel space program that went to the moon, that went to Mars, that went to the moons of Jupiter and beyond. But you're given this slow IV drip of hope that man will get into space if we can only get it together, and if we can get the Mars rover to go another 5 feet and look around and take more pictures. And now, oh yay, we have a little drone helicopter which takes off from the Mars rover now, and we can fly around, we can see stuff. Okay, but you're being restricted to a very specific flight path. Just as those pilots, Air Force pilots, were flying around New Schwaberland and were told not to look at the big hole in the ground. The same way you're not allowed to go by the face on Mars and photograph that. Dude, there have been pictures that have been released recently of the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. It's a satellite that's flying around Mars. And they have taken pictures of this thing. I'm going to show you, dude. They have taken pictures of this thing, and it looks like a cross between an eyeball iris and a bee's hive on Mars. And you're looking at this like, dude, what the fuck is that? It is crazy. Yeah, I haven't sent this to you yet, man, but it is bananas crazy. And you're like, oh, yeah, people have been on Mars for thousands of years. When you see this shit, it's like, oh, yeah, there's some for real Skeletor alien shit going on up there.
Look,
before we go, I want to talk about a component of the secret space program and how duct tape has been witnessing several launches of rockets, these vertical contrails that are going vertical, being launched from Earth into the upper atmosphere. Go ahead and tell them about your experiences.
I'm in Omaha, and we see a bunch of chemtrails or comtrails, whatever you want to call them. We see them all the time. But recently I saw two. And going back, I saw one a few months back where they were straight up vertical. These are coming up from the earth. These are not somebody flying over the state of Nebraska. This is something originating in either Iowa or Nebraska that's going up. Like I said, he said rocket. I don't know if they're rockets or what they are, but I'm seeing these trails, and I'm like, nah, that's not horizontal up in the sky. That's vertical coming from, that's coming from the ground up. And I'm like, what is this? So I would take pictures and send them to Roscoe, like, bruh, check this one out. If there's something being launched from here, I don't know what it is. And I've never seen what's at the beginning of it. I've never got the chance to see the whole thing take place, but there's something going on that's not being reported. There's no media outlet. Nobody's talking about it. Ain't nobody called it in that I know of. But if anybody who can hear my voice, if you see something like this in the Midwest, just hit a like, explain it to us, and send what you think. But I'm telling you, I'm seeing these trails coming up, going up in the sky, and I can't explain them. I just can't explain them. And here's the other thing: like, I've seen weird stuff in the sky. You know, I was dumb enough to go look. One time I saw some lights in the sky. I'm like, where's it at? I went to it. It was like a data scrubber. This is some shit that you see in Iraq. My homeboy who was in the military said, hey, Red, that was a data scrubber. That's monitoring cell phone signals, blah, blah,
it's
blah.
It's a surveillance platform.
Yes, exactly what it was. One of my I got some friends, family, what do you want to call them, that do things. They explained to me what it was. But I ain't had nobody, because I really haven't shared this with everybody.
Yeah, but since we're on the topic of the secret space program,
you
had an experience, but you have more than one experience, though. You have other experiences, dude, because you had the experience where you were driving on the south side, and you went by the baseball stadium, you went by the zoo, and you were in your truck, and you stopped, and this craft was above you. You said, what, 50 feet, 100 feet?
I'm saying it's probably 300 feet in the air, but this thing is huge. This thing was about the size, I say, at least a baseball field, because you could see it, you could hear it, and when you looked up at it, for the first time, like, you feel like you're not a predator. You feel like you're prey. Like, you got goosebumps. And when I looked at it, I got a good enough look. I'm like, I'm getting the hell out of here. I don't know what this is. I don't know. I'm just trying to tell you that when all these people that ask to see UFOs ain't seen until you see something that you can't explain, like legitimately, like I do not know what that is.
But it's a visceral experience. The crazy part,
primal,
no. This is the part that got me is when you told me that you could hear hydraulic motors.
I could hear. I can't describe it, but it wasn't this whirring sound. You could hear some kind of mechanics. You could hear some kind of something mechanical going on. This shit was right.
That's
right
the crazy
above,
part. It's like you said, it's 300 feet up. That's loud.
Yeah.
That's loud if you can hear that shit. Because but hold on, this is the crazy part though. At that moment, you weren't focusing on any other sounds around you.
Dude, it was wintertime. I had my window down because I was kind of hot. I'm driving on is it 13th Street or whatever because my lady lived over south. I'm coming from downtown, and you start hearing it, and you're hearing this sound, and I'm like, and I'm looking at it because it's.
And what color was it? What color was it?
It was dark. It was like a dark color. It was nighttime.
But it wasn't the Haunebu. It wasn't.
No.
If that wasn't a flying saucer.
It was more of a long shape. Had angles on it. You could see square shapes. You know, like you glanced up at it, and then I looked down like, holy shit! And I look up again, and then that's where I get the fuck out of there. I'm like, I can't believe this, but this thing is big enough. And like I said, I got goosebumps even now talking about it. Where you're hearing this, and I'm like, it's like when you describe the old ballpark because it's not there no more. But yeah, it's by the old Rosenblatt / Henry Doorly Zoo, and this thing is big enough. And what made me look in the first place is I'm driving with the window down, kind of chilling, and you hear like somebody, not quite construction, but you hear some kind of mechanical stuff. I'm like, damn, what they doing working on the zoo this late? That's literally what I thought. And there's like a biodome at the zoo, and the thing was near that. That's when you look over. That's when you're like, oh, that doesn't belong there. So, like I said, I've seen other stuff.
And was this directly above you?
No. It was more to the left, which would have been east. It would have been to the east of me.
So, okay, but would you say it was like the same height up as like a 10-story building or like a 18-story building? Or, okay, I'll give you a better example. Was it higher than the top of, like, you go outside and you stare at the top of the Woodman Tower? Was it taller than that?
No. Oh, no, hell, it wasn't that high. No, not at all.
How many stories is the Woodman Tower?
Like 32? 30 something?
32.
Yeah,
what a number. Anyway.
Yeah. And so it wasn't that high, not at all. Here's the deal. Like I said, usually after I had that experience, the first experience I had with the data scrubber, I didn't give a damn. I'm gangster. I went to look for it. After having that experience at the zoo, I don't have that same vigor anymore because I was scared. But this time, like I said, when I saw those trails going up, being downtown, being where I was, I couldn't jump in my car and go see, where they originate. But I've done that before. Like when I've seen stuff, like I said, when I saw that data scrubber, which at the time I didn't know what it was, I'm seeing these lights bouncing and flashing. I'm like, wow, that's some crazy shit. I drove to it. It was, there's a Home Depot there now, but when we were kids, there was a Kmart there, and there's a bunch of TV towers, and it was near the TV tower. I could see that.
Northwest.
I literally drove from where I was, kept staring at it, drive like about a half a mile, find it in the, I literally drove to where it was. After that incident at the zoo, my balls ain't as big as they used to be, son, because that's just, at some point in time, sometimes you get to the point where you're like, hey man, that's some serious shit. Whoever got that could whoop my ass. But like I said, when I see these trails going up, I'm getting more curious because I've seen them going back months. But
I've heard stories about how these data scrubbers are really thin and that they're probably drones that are not piloted by people.
Well, okay, this one was hovering. See, when you think of drone, you're thinking of like a Predator drone, like a little airplane. This thing was hovering.
Or the new NASA space plane, which is not piloted by anybody.
Yep. But the other thing, I lied. I think I will say going back almost over a year because the first time I saw these kind of vertical trails, I was coming from my old house. So it's been about a year and a half. The first time I saw one, and I sent you that picture. That was when I saw that X. I'm literally going down Hamilton, and I see like these two trails that cross, and I'm like, those are not up in the sky. These are at an angle. So that means whatever came up over in the Iowa area, and they
To the
crossed.
east.
And
To the east.
yes, to the east. Yeah. So that was the first time, and I took a picture of those. And then only recently have I started sending them. Like when I take them now, I send them to you just so I can like, hey, bro. One of the times I went to the top of my building because I'm in an apartment and it's 12 stories. I went up to the top just for my own satisfaction. Like, hey, let me look at this. And yes, it was not going across the sky; it was going up into the sky. Yeah. So for what it's worth, again, I haven't seen a rocket. I haven't seen that, but I've seen something that's going up into the sky that's originating on Earth, not far from my area. Yeah, and that's some crazy, crazy shit. That's all I'm saying. The whole thing is we've always read this stuff in the past. Anunnaki, Egyptians, they all talked about these different things, and they make you think that it's bullshit. They code it in a bunch of crap, so you're like, oh no, that's just some. It has nothing to do with me. Look, if there's more out there, you should have the freedom to go see it for yourself or go experience it, or stop limiting yourself. The reason they put that shit out there and they have you arguing over iPhones and Android
is
shit
because
so
you don't know about the Haunebu. And you don't even know what the fuck a Haunebu
so you
is.
Won't know.
Listen,
Yeah.
Okay, a Haunebu. Go look up a Haunebu. Haunebu. And this damn thing was flown 106 test flights between two models. So that they had plenty of time to work out the kinks and all the bugs in these UFOs that they were building. And that was in 1943 and 39 back then.
38, 39. Yes. That's the point. They want you to think that you can't achieve this shit. Because here's what happens. You remember conspiracy theory with Jesse Ventura. Mm-hmm. And remember he was talking to that one scientist. He was like, are you a doctor? He's like, no, I'm not a doctor. And then he had that damn thing on top of his motorhome that he had made. Like, this was some super technology. That tells you that if you were given the blueprints or if you were given the keys to the castle, you could make some shit on your own. You do not need funding. You do not need the government's permission. You don't need anything. So what these people are doing is like, okay, they're a big brain trust and we want to go here. We have nefarious things, but there are good people out there who just do shit and you don't need permission. You take the shackles off your mind. Stop worrying about race. Stop worrying about this or that. Stop worrying about the bullshit and take the shackles off your mind, and you could actually achieve some godhood shit. So they don't want that. They don't want a Christ running around here.
Yeah, dude. I mean, you gotta understand these people. These are the people that killed Jesus Christ. All right, they killed him. They stabbed him, and they used the blood from the spear to
do rituals,
all types of rituals, and they then got hold of King Solomon's treasure, and they got hold of ancient alien spacecraft, and they've been going to the moon, and they go into the dark side, and they got structures on the moon, and all these things that one day, when you finally get up there, you'll see, and they'll have some nice cover-up story to show all of this stuff. But
and you won't question it because you don't want to lose your benefits.
Yeah, because you like, ordering your food and having delivered to you and your Netflix. You like your nest. You like your little bird's nest that you're in, and you don't want these eagles swooping down, eating your babies.
Look, reality is subjective. Your reality is different. We talked about this shit. Like, before we got on the air, we were talking about people getting knocked out in the UFC. Like, their reality was different. These people woke up, kept fighting, even though they had been knocked out. That's how this reality is. Their reality.
You're the person that's been knocked out, and you,
exactly.
You think that you are in this fight and it's still a fair fight. No.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. like you think everything is normal. Like, hey, I'm equal. Nope. They are knocking you out, taking shit from you, hiding shit from you, and making you much weaker than you should be on purpose. So remove those shackles. Go look this shit up. Trust me, this Admiral Byrd ain't got shit to lie about. He ain't gained nothing. Trust me. Check this shit out. Check out those transcripts from the interviews with him. This will blow your mind.
In closing, I will tell you that the future that you dreamed of did happen, but it only happened for a small group of very powerful people. And you need to dig deep and dig up the information to learn about the separate alternate history that led the way and created the world that you don't see, that will merge with yours one day and will then be a lie that's taught to you in the future. So be aware of future lies that are coming your way based on a alternate truth in the past. We out. Peace.
Holla back.